So, welcome to our Devtoberfest session for the tools for Clean ABAP. This will be a presentation by two speakers. I'm Björn, a senior developer with SAP and the product owner of the ABAP Test Cockpit framework and the maintainer of the CodePal open source project. And Joerg-Michael is a senior developer in finance and accounting and the main maintainer of the ABAP Cleaner open source project. I will start with a brief overview of what Clean ABAP is as an idea and which projects are under this umbrella maintained by SAP. Then I will give you an explanation and demonstration of the CodePal project, and then I will hand over to Joerg-Michael, who will show you the ABAP Cleaner in action. So, what is Clean ABAP and why do we do it? Well, in general, there's this clean code movement initiated, among other things, by this book by Robert C. Martin on clean code. And Clean ABAP specifically is an adaptation of these principles to the ABAP language. Because every language has its own pitfalls and specialties. And this, so we adapt this guide specifically to what is practical in ABAP. The goal is, as in every language, to write readable, testable, and maintainable code. So code that not only is functionally correct, but that can be easily maintained by developers, where developers actually communicate the intent of the code to each other by the way they write it. And it's mainly optimized for the reader. Why is that? Because we spend more time reading code than writing code in the usual case. Sometimes you might spend an entire day as a developer writing code, but especially when you're analyzing bugs or extending existing features, you first have to understand the code base as it already exists. And so the time you spend reading code is the main part of that kind of exercise. And so it is important that not only is this time efficiently used, but also that the code is readable in the first place, that you can't make mistakes, that the code doesn't, that you don't misunderstand the code. And the better the code is optimized for that use case, the more efficient you will be able to maintain your existing code base as it grows. So what's special in ABAP compared to other languages? ABAP has evolved over a long time. I mean, that's not that special compared to other languages, but it has also an extreme focus on backwards compatibility in the sense that ABAP code that was written 30 years ago typically still runs without issue today. It's not always 100% true, but it's true in the vast majority of cases. And so this means we have lots of legacy code if our organization is old. And historically, there has been no consensus on what programming conventions we should follow regarding formatting, regarding variable naming, and so on. And the goal of Clean ABAP is to at least make a suggestion for such a convention so that at least new code or code that you rework will be more cohesive and follow a more uniform style. So what does this encompass, right? So Clean ABAP is this idea. Then there's the part of this idea where we can describe it by rules. And these description in terms of rules is done by the Clean ABAP style guide, which is also an open source project maintained in the GitHub repository by SAP, but like all the other projects here, open to community feedback and contributions. But now the style guide alone, it would be good if everyone just read it and followed it, right? But for one, how are the developers going to learn about it? How do we actually check that this is being done? What if someone misunderstands the guide? Right. So a guide alone is nice. It's a very good starting point. It is necessary to have it, but it's not sufficient to really have trust in your development environment, to really trust also that you yourself really follow the guidelines, right? So this is where the other projects come in we will talk about today. And so the next step is that we can check if code follows these guidelines, at least some of these guidelines. Some of these guidelines will be more philosophical or architectural and cannot be checked automatically. But a lot of these guidelines regarding formatting, regarding the structure of the code on a syntactical level can be checked by automated tools. And both CodePal and ABAP Cleaner are tools to do that. While the CodePal is the main tooling for checking this because it's integrated into the ABAP Test Cockpit framework, which is the tool with which we also check all other quality aspects of code like security, performance, and so on. So the CodePal exists in two versions because historically it was first initiated as a project that would be available on systems starting with SAP Basis Release 740. But then, especially with the rise of BTP and ABAP on BTP, also called Steampunk, there was a need for a cloud version also that is remote enabled so that you can use the ATC system in the BTP to check other systems, legacy systems in your on-premise landscape. And so there are two versions of it, but the functional goal of both is the same, to provide an automated tool to check whether code conforms to the style guide and then to emit ATC findings, so specific findings in the problem view in your IDE or a transport release to show you where the code is not conforming to the style guide. This is mostly configurable. It is also configurable. You don't always have to run it for all the rules and so on. And the cloud version, like ABAP Cleaner, then also offers the additional step not only to check these issues, but also to automate their fixes. For the CodePal, this is called quick fixes. The ABAP Cleaner does it as its main kind of business. And then the code, after you've agreed that you want to automatically enforce some of these rules, you can then automatically change the code to conform to these rules. Yeah, so this is this kind of onion model you see also on the right. There's a large amount of style aspects one can describe. Some of them one can check automatically, and some of those that one can check automatically, one can also automatically fix. So yeah, the CodePal is a set of ATC checks, so it's integrated into the standard quality tools most ABAP developers should be already familiar with. And if you are not, we always suggest people to start using it because there's lots of aspects you can improve about your code if you run ATC checks. Since they are ordinary ATC checks, they can be added to any variant that's already in use. So if you're already using that as a quality process, it's very easy to integrate. And also you have the full feature set of the ATC to deal with exceptional cases, legacy code, and so on. You can say, well, we have a bunch of old code where we don't really want to enforce these style guidelines because we would have to rewrite the entire thing. Then you can say we only want to do that for the new code and draw a baseline where you say, yeah, these findings are not important for us, but any new code should really be conforming to the style guides. You can exempt specific findings or write pseudo comments for other exceptional cases. So this has the same kind of convenience features, everything else. It consists of a bunch of individual checks with individual configurations, because as much as we present the style guide as a suggestion for a uniform convention, the reality is also often that not all rules make sense for all development contexts. And there's still a bunch of stuff in there that's just up to personal preference, especially regarding formatting. And starting with any kind of convention is better than having none. So if you can't or don't want to enforce the full scope of the guide, we offer these tools also to enforce only the specific parts of it. And as I already said, the quick fixes are then integrated into the IDE, in this case, the ABAP development tools, to automatically correct the findings. So far for the theory. And now I want to give you a demonstration of how this feels for a developer in practice. I will demonstrate the cloud version of the CodePal, but the essential feel of it is the same in both versions. So since it is ABAP based and an open source project, it is installed via ABAP Git into either your on-premise or the BTP system. I will demonstrate this on a BTP system. So here's my ADT, and can you see on the right, there's a bunch of ABAP Git repositories already linked to it. And the CodePal has already been installed. This takes a few minutes, but it's just a few button clicks. But because it costs time watching it install, I don't have already done this in this case. And if you've done this, you have installed it into a package starting with this new namespace CC4A. Another aspect of the cloud version is that all CodePal objects have their own namespace. This is related to SAP's new feature of namespaces for open source projects, because we realized there these used to be only developed in the typical Z and Y namespaces, and there was a lot of collisions in there, or at least there was a potential for collisions with naming in there. And since namespaces were designed to prevent that for individual projects, we've now also made it possible that open source projects can use their own namespaces, and these are then available for any customer who wants to install them or contribute to them to install in their systems. So once you've installed this, it comes automatically with an ATC check variant that contains all the checks that are currently there, and you can run this check variant on your code to find out how conformant to the style guide you are. So, and it also comes with a bunch of test objects. These exist for a twofold purpose. On the one hand, for the automated unit tests of the checks themselves, but also as examples so that you can test out what the CodePal actually does. And now I want to show you a check that was only recently merged into our main development line in the cloud, which is a check that looks for variables that are inline declared but used in a way that's confusing or hard to read sometimes. So if you want to run this, you just go on any object you want to run it on to run as ABAP Test Cockpit with, and then you enter the name of the CodePal variant here, or you enter your own ATC variant where you've added the CodePal checks, and then you run it. And you already see I've already done this here before, and you then get a list of ATC findings. By default, these all have priority error, but this is fully configurable. Usually, you probably don't want to use all style guide related findings as with the highest priority in ATC, but this is fully configurable. So now we see a list of errors. We already see a difference between these errors, that some of these are just the red box for an error, and some of these have this light bulb here. Every finding that has a light bulb is one that is automatically fixable by a quick fix. And now let's see what it complains, for example, about. So we see here we start in this test object with a bunch of methods in the public section, and then I get here an error. It's an instant method, which is not part of an interface, because the style guide suggests all public methods should be part of an interface for reason to be able to easily mock them, or otherwise exchange the underlying implementation more easily from the perspective of the colleagues. And now for this scope check. So here's a bunch of methods with variable declarations. Inline declarations are very common in somewhat recent ABAP code. It's a great feature to not have a giant list of ABAP declarations at the start of your method, and to see where the variable is actually used for the first time. But sometimes, because the scope in ABAP works a little bit differently from other programming languages, you can also then use this variable that's declared here outside the branch it's declared. So this variable var1 here is declared in the if branch, but it's also used in the else. And in most other programming languages, this would not be possible, because the declaration scope of the variable would only be inside this if branch. Because this is confusing, especially to people used to other languages, and also because the variable in this branch then will start with the value 0 instead of the 5 it's assigned in the other branch. And the style guide suggests that this shouldn't be done, but the variable should always be declared outside of all the branches it's eventually used in. And now, do I have to manually move around all these declarations? No, the check automatically determines where the variable is used, and then will be able to change the scope so that it is declared in the proper place. So now you see it's done. It's extracted the definition to before the two branches of the if, and also set it to 0, because that is the default value it would anyway have had in the else branch. Sometimes the check won't be able to do this automatically, then you just get the finding, but no quick fixes offered. But in the vast majority of cases, for this particular fix, this will be automatically fixable. And it can do this for various constructions. For example, here we have a longer example where some variable is constructed in line with the value constructor, but it's also then used here in another branch, and then it can also move this declaration outside. And again, it has understood that it would have been initial in the other branch, so the value here is the initial value of the type, and it has left the other constructors untouched. So this is one of this is the newest check we have, and I think it's really nice because it also makes you think a little bit more about how variables are declared and what it actually means to declare them inside these branches and so on, right? And in general, compared to reading the style guide, the advantage of this is that you have the findings directly in your code, and you can look at it in your IDE. You see these findings, and you can learn what the style guide actually would want you to do. And it's a nice way to learn the rules more by doing than by reading just a document. And you can also then get a feeling more for which rules you consider meaningful and which you maybe don't want to use in your landscape in that way. There are lots of other findings. So, for example, another finding is the style guide suggests that the concatenation operator inline is, well, it's still valid to be used, but we have string templates these days which are more powerful and can do all the things that the concatenation operator can also do. And for consistency, therefore, we should only use one of these operators to construct strings. And now the check can also show you how to, for example, transform this now into these templates here, and many more. So the scope declaration also works for declarations that are not inline. So for example, here is a variable named A declared that's also then used here in the other branch, and it can also extract these non-inline declarations. Yeah, there are many more checks. You saw at the beginning the list of checks here, where and the list is growing. So for one, we are still adding checks for rules in the site guide that can be automatically checked. And if you have an idea for a check or want to contribute, then you can do so. And that's the last thing I want to briefly show. So we have a GitHub repository here. This is the one for the cloud edition. This tells you how to install it and explains briefly what we do here, and you can contribute. So contributions of all kinds are welcome. You can open an issue if you found a bug, or if you think the documentation is unclear, or you can directly contribute a pull request if you have fixed a bug or fixed some typo in the description or stuff like this. And so from my point of view, our goal is also really to encourage other people to contribute here, to engage with the ABAP language, because especially when you try to analyze it in this automated fashion, there's a lot of stuff you can learn about the ABAP language and how it works. And so trying to analyze other people's code has only made me a better programmer, I think, and gave me a better understanding of what the rules in the style guide actually do and why they are there, and how code looks when it's changed to conform to this guide. And I also want to invite everyone, try it out, try using the tool, perhaps try thinking about what it could do more, and encourage everyone else to at least have a look at the style guide and our tooling for it too. I could show you all the other checks we have, but that would probably go beyond the amount of time we have today. And we still have the ABAP Cleaner, which is the counterpart to this, but not integrated into the ATC, but directly into your IDE at the front end. And with that, I will hand over to Joerg-Michael.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bjoern. So to continue with ABAP Cleaner, I would today actually want to give a kind of diff presentation. So the focus of my presentation today basically is the last point that you can see here, what's new in ABAP Cleaner. But nevertheless, maybe you haven't heard about ABAP Cleaner yet, so I will spend maybe just 5 minutes at the beginning to give you a brief overview. What is ABAP Cleaner? How can you install and use it? Just very briefly, how has ABAP Cleaner evolved? And then really our focus will be on the what's new question. So what is ABAP Cleaner? Basically, our vision statement here is ABAP Cleaner is a configurable tool with the ambition to automate whatever can be automated with respect to ABAP code style. So like Bjoern already said, the focus here is on automation. And obviously, you can't automate everything for ABAP code style, but whatever can be automated really takes load away from you, right? So it's one click and then you can focus on the more complex things. That's the idea. And you can see from this vision that it's ambitious, right? We want to really do for you as much as possible. And with that, I will just quickly show you how do you install and use ABAP Cleaner. So what you need to have is obviously the URL github.com/sub/ABAP Cleaner, and we'll also post it obviously below this video. And this will take you to the repository of ABAP Cleaner. And if you scroll down a bit here, first of all, you will find the Devtoberfest session of last year. So if my brief introduction today is too short for you and you want the more extended version to that, then just watch this. I think it's 75 minutes. You will definitely get enough basic information on ABAP Cleaner. Then further down, you see the installation section. So what you do basically is you copy this link into the clipboard. Then you go to your ABAP development tools, ADT. You say help, install new software. You paste in the link that you've copied. Press enter, and then you already see that ABAP Cleaner is available here. You follow the installation steps and so on. Restart ADT, and then you have ABAP Cleaner in your ADT. Now, how is it used? It's really very simple. It's basically inside the source code menu, you see 3 new menu points: clean up with automated ABAP Cleaner, interactive ABAP Cleaner, and show read-only preview. And the one shortcut that you really want to memorize is Control-4, not Control-F4, Control-4. Because now you can just select any section of code, you press Control-4, and then ABAP Cleaner cleans that for you. So this works for one single statement, this works for a small section of code, or if you do not select any code and just press Control-4 inside of a method, then it will clean up the whole method. Or maybe you are in a declaration section, let's say here in this section, press Control-4, then it cleans that. That's the automated ABAP Cleaner. Now, let's suppose you have a larger portion of code. I just select the entire code, and then I will show you quickly the interactive ABAP Cleaner. So source code cleanup with interactive ABAP Cleaner, and this will show you a diff view. Let's go to a more interesting section. Yeah, a diff view of the incoming code on the left-hand side and the clean code on the right-hand side. And with that, you are able to actually look at what would ABAP Cleaner change here. So for example, it's removing the me here, or it is replacing this +1 with a calculation operator. It's moving the position of pragma to the right point and so on. And the advantage of this interactive view is, first of all, you can see what's going on before it happens. And second, you can also mark a section and say, okay, in this section, I don't want this specific rule to be used. So don't do that, don't do that. This is not deactivating the entire rule, it's just deactivating it locally. And then you continue to check the changes. And when you say, okay, now that's what I want the code to look like, then you press apply and close, and then it's transferred back to your code. And then, as we will see later, this button here up is very important, the configure button, because this gives you a list of all the available cleanup rules and allows you to configure all of them. And we are going to look at that in more detail later. So this is really just 101. basic on how to use ABAP Cleaner. And like I said, you can refer to the first Devtoberfest session of last year to see a more extended version of that. Now, what has happened in between since last year, basically, in case you watched that? How has ABAP Cleaner evolved? First of all, what has really been great is you see here a graph of the number of issues opened. And ABAP Cleaner has had an inner source phase starting in December 21. And then it was open sourced, and you see here that the issues, the feedback, and the ideas coming in were really amazing. So it's really gone up, and showing interest, of course, showing engagement, showing new ideas. That has really been great. And now, if you wonder what this spike is, this is the Devtoberfest session of 2023. So shortly after that, it really went up significantly. Now we are here. Let's see what happens after today. So I think we have more than 100 issues in the inner source phase, over 300 in the open source phase. And actually, if you wanted more details, the blue ones are the new ideas. Then we obviously also have bug reports, and then some, no defect duplicate. The section of course is also there. So thank you very much for all the feedback that we've received. And you will see in the next slide that this is not just feedback for us to have received, but it's also, of course, it has inspired the work, right? So because what also happened to the number of cleanup rules, to the scope that ABAP Cleaner is doing, it has really significantly gone up. Because obviously we had more users. With that, we had more ideas, as you saw on the last slide. And this really has quite a lot increased the feature. So since open sourcing, it has now grown by 40 cleanup rules. And many of those are inspired by the ideas that you as a community have contributed. What also happened, interestingly, is that per cleanup rule, the number of options has grown. So if you have more users, then they might have more diverse code styles in their teams. And that also means that people say, yeah, okay, in our case, this option doesn't make sense. Could you please add another option? So all the feedback has also led to an increase of configuration options. I know that this makes things a bit more difficult in the beginning because you might try to find your way through those options to find your coding style, but that's really just the initial effort, right? So once you say, okay, this is how I want the code, then you really just need Control 4 to go forward, and maybe then configure the new rules once in a while. And what also has happened is the number of unit tests had significantly grown. So we are close to 3,000 now. That's also obviously an effect of open sourcing ABAP Cleaner. More users means that you have more people configuring ABAP Cleaner differently and also applying that to different code styles. That led to more bugs found, and then to more fixes and regression tests. And ultimately, of course, that benefits our stability. So we are trying to keep this at around 90% test coverage for the backend code. So you can be quite sure that ABAP Cleaner really doesn't mess up with your code, because that's, of course, what we don't want at all. So that's what's happened on a numeric, so to speak, view of it. And now I really want to demo what's new, to show the new features to you. Like I said, all the ones that I'm not going to show you, you will find in the Devtoberfest presentation of last year. So what's new in ABAP Cleaner? First of all, let me get back to ADT. And I will start with the changes on the UI, so to speak. So one very nice idea from the community was this third menu that you already saw, show read-only preview with ABAP Cleaner. So unlike the interactive ABAP Cleaner, this is not going to block your code. It doesn't even require you to have any development rights. You just open ABAP Cleaner with the code that you currently have. We already saw that. And unlike the interactive menu, it doesn't have this apply. So this is not designed to really change the code, but to give you a preview of what happens, right? The benefit of that is that you can play around here as you like. And you also have two nice new menus, code from clipboard and code from file. So you could take into your clipboard code from any source, maybe even from the SAP GUI, and paste it into ABAP Cleaner and play around, or even load it from a code file. So that's only possible with this third menu, show read-only preview. Everything else works exactly the same. Also, the configuration is the same. The configuration is also the same across these three menus. But it is a way that I'm also using quite a bit. Like if somebody else logs the transport, or if you just want to take a look and want absolutely be sure that nothing changes, right? But then, as you can see here, we've added small things like the ABAP version that's currently used in your system. So ABAP Cleaner obviously retrieves that. And as you probably already know, you have the ability to restrict the ABAP Cleaner rules to a certain syntax. So to say, okay, I later have to downport this to an older system or whatever, and therefore only do changes that are compatible with older ABAP versions. That's how you can do that. And now you see the version of your system here. Also, these labels before cleanup and after cleanup were added because, you know, in some other diff views you have that the other way around, and just to be completely sure about that. Another technical thing that we changed is that these cleanup settings, like the profile that you used, the cleanup range, the restricting of rules, they are now workspace specific. So for those of you who might be working with ADT in different workspaces, maybe even for different customers and so on, you will still reuse the same set of profiles for all of them, but each workspace remembers the profile that you last used. So if you need specific profiles for the different workspaces, then just maybe even name them after the workspace, and then ABAP Cleaner will keep and memorize that for you. Now, another very nice idea on the UI is, now I'm selecting all the code here, and you can see that it now shows me the rules that were used on this code. And you can now very conveniently say, okay, what's used here? It's align and parameters. I want to configure that differently because I don't like it how it is here. So what you do is now you control click on the rule, and then you're exactly in the rule that you want to change. So that's a very convenient way to do it. Let me go to another example. Maybe here we've used, replaced add to with the calculation assignments. You want to change that. Here you are at the right place. Again, a nice idea from the community. Then you might have noticed if you were using ABAP Cleaner that in between the colors changed. So we have this menu, use ADT style color. So these are now inspired by the diff view in ADT. You can switch it back to the old colors, which are a bit more in your face, so to speak. I personally very much like the ADT colors now, so I'm using those. Then one feature that was requested a lot is that you might not want to just have your own profiles, and then your colleague has to set their own, and then the next colleague has to set their own, and it results in a mix of profile settings. But you might want to synchronize those profiles, those settings across the team. So there was a very urgent request for some means to synchronize that. That's not trivial because ABAP Cleaner is completely living in the front end. So ABAP Cleaner is just installed locally on your computer. And your profiles are also locally. It's no backend involved here. So the solution that we found is that you can use this folders button here and say, okay, I'm going to select from my hard disk some folder here, select this, And now imagine this isn't a synchronized folder, but imagine this is a folder that is maybe synchronized with your organization's OneDrive or SharePoint or whatever. And now you use this synchronized folder to put profiles in it. And your colleagues will use the same folder that's synchronized. And this way you can synchronize folders. And now if you are the lead developer or the architect, you maintain your local profile and simply export it to this synchronized folder, and then everybody will immediately have that. So you would probably determine one person to figure out how exactly does your team want this configured. Then they export it to the synchronized folder, and everybody will immediately get this, and then obviously use this profile to clean up their code. Then one small, but maybe even also very nice feature is that you can just right-click a rule here and copy the rule name to the clipboard or even to the description. So if you communicate about ABAP Cleaner, I do a lot and I typed in the rule names a lot, but now you have this context menu. So that's the changes on UI. And now obviously most interesting, of course, are the new cleanup rules. And you know that there's this highlight function that shows you, okay, highlight me all the features that were added since before last September. So that was the last Oktoberfest session. And then you can see here all the green rules are the ones that were added, and all the gray ones are the ones where we added at least some configuration. And as you saw, that has gone up quite a lot. I will use a different highlight now, but it is the same here. So all the green rules are added. And yeah, I would now like to go through these rules to show you what nice new things were added since last year, since last Oktoberfest, basically. So here, for example, we have new options. I think there is even a new ATC check that warns you if you attach literals with operators. So ABAP Cleaner can clean that away, right? So on the right-hand side, you see that these keywords or these operators are now detached from the literals, so you don't have to do that manually, and you will never run again into this ATC check if you use ABAP Cleaner, because it will simply be done already. Then we have a new rule that removes needless spaces. So you can see here that a lot of space is actually not needed here. And ABAP Cleaner condenses that, but not completely, right? It still tries to determine, okay, probably these assignment operators are aligned intentionally, so it doesn't remove this space, but it keeps the alignment, but nevertheless removes as much as possible. We have a rule to remove needless clear. So I've seen that quite a lot. So if you start a method in ABAP, then all the variables that are declared are clear from the beginning. They are initialized automatically. So you don't have to initialize them again. You do have, of course, to initialize the exporting parameters. So ABAP Cleaner makes that distinction. It just removes those that are not needed to be cleared. You can delete them. Whereas at the end of the method, clearing them also doesn't make sense, but you might actually be just in the process of writing the methods. So if you press Control-4 in this situation and want to continue writing it, then ABAP Cleaner shouldn't remove that, right? So at method end, it would just add a to-do comment. And in case you continue to write the method and you intentionally cleared the variable here, it will also, if you clean it up again, remove the to-do comment again. But at least you get a reminder, maybe if the method is really finished here, yeah, it doesn't make sense to clear anything anymore. Now we have the same for unused parameters. So if your method imports parameters and never uses them, that might be okay if it's an interface method, because not all implementations maybe use all parameters. But if it's a non-interface method, it's a bit questionable, right? So why do you have a parameter that's never used? Often that's due to copy errors, and therefore it makes sense to add a warning and say, yeah, this parameter is not used. Maybe you should remove it. Maybe you should consider why you're not using it, and so on. Same for exporting parameters and so on. Then we have a rule that standardizes the class definitions, right? So I think the most expert ABAP developers even wouldn't know what is the official order of the keywords in this, right? Do you have public definition, final, inheriting for testing? What's the correct order of that? So this rule does it for you. So all the class definitions look the same now. You can obviously say, okay, I want this indented a bit more, maybe aligned with the class name, aligned with definition. And then you can say, I want to group these lines. So for example, for testing should go on one line or maybe on several lines, just as you like. Inheritance could be behind definition or in the next line. So you can just configure it exactly as you want, but it will now be in the official order, so to speak. Then there was the request to be able to use a consistent set of comparison operators. So these textual comparison operators can be replaced with the symbolic ones, but you can also now do it the other way around. So maybe for whatever reason you prefer those, you can do that, but I think it really makes sense to be consistent here. So either way, the rule will support you to be consistent. Then Bjoern already showed that there is a check now about string templates, and actually ABAP Cleaner also does that. So you can turn these concatenations into string templates, and you can even fine-tune it a bit and say, okay, embed the operand if the result is shorter, or if it is shorter or at least equal. If you always do it, then sometimes the result looks more confusing than it was initially, right? So I found for me that either of these two settings is good and makes the code more readable. Then we have remove needless parentheses. So sometimes, maybe even from other programming languages like Java, people tend to put parentheses around all logical statements, but in ABAP you don't have to, right? So you can remove those. Then if I scroll down a bit, yeah, there's this operator precedence thing. So actually and binds stronger than or. So these parentheses are not needed either. So logically, you could remove them. On the other hand, these cases maybe should be kept because it increases readability, right? So maybe not everybody in every situation knows exactly these operator precedents. So you can configure whether you want to remove them in this case. And also in the case that you have lots of ors or lots of ands, you don't need parentheses in that case, but maybe for some reason it is grouped to be more readable. So just decide for yourself. Then we have a couple of older or maybe even obsolete ABAP keywords that can now be replaced with nice string functions that we have in newer ABAP. So translate can be transferred, can change to lower, to upper, to the translate function, which I think is nicely readable if you put the from and the to below each other. The condense statement, there is also a string function for that. Sometimes for me, it is more readable if you explicitly specify the parameters. So some of these parameters can be removed because they have good defaults, but sometimes it's more readable to really have them. Just take a look at the examples and decide for yourself. Describe table can be replaced with lines, at least in some cases. For the others, you will always find in these examples descriptions of why can this not be replaced. So ABAP Cleaner obviously doesn't just do things, but it only does the things that really are allowed and make sense. And very widely used readable in many cases can be replaced with table expressions, which are shorter, and I also find them much better to read. So you can replace a sign, and readable can be replaced with line exists if you're just checking whether a line exists, or if you are looking for a line index, this can be replaced. So that's all automated. But again, there are a couple of cases which cannot be replaced, and obviously ABAP Cleaner doesn't do it, and you can find in the examples why you cannot replace them. Then if you do unit tests, hopefully you do, then you are certainly familiar with these assertion statements of the CL ABAP unit assert class. But a common issue is that some people put the actual parameter first and others put the expected parameter first. Actually, the official version is to put the expected first. So ABAP Cleaner will swap that just to be consistent. Again, you can say, okay, but I want the actual first. That's fine. But be consistent, and including in your team, because otherwise people will have a hard time understanding your code. We have a new rule to use camel case for known CDS names. So SAP has this long table of officially approved CDS names, so or view names and field names. And if you put all those to lowercase or uppercase, it's sometimes really difficult to read, right? So text rptg date is active. That's much better to read if you have camel case. So that can be done automatically. And you can read a bit through this. There's sometimes a bit of a complication because inside the ABAP structure, you can't always tell whether maybe this currency is meant to be lowercase. So ABAP Cleaner will decide from the context, okay, chart of accounts is something that definitely wants to be put in camel case, then probably the whole context can be put in camel case. So there's options to fine tune that as well, but I think it works pretty well for what I've seen and really increases readability. I've seen tests in which you just do one click and suddenly it looks so much better. Then I think at the beginning of last year, we've invested quite a bit of thought into select clauses. Obviously, that's very hard, a thing very hard to properly align, and now finally you get support for that by ABAP Cleaner. And as always, you can configure, do you want one-liners if possible, right? If they fit into one line. Do you want the from clause to start on a new line? Here it is, right? How much indentation do you want for these clause keywords? You can just play around and find the right format. Because select is so complex, it actually is covering 3 rules. Because the second one is now, okay, the joins. How shall the joins be formatted? Should they be indented or not? Should they be indented a lot? Should the table name continue after the join? I actually like this stair-like layout. I saw it in documentation and really liked that. Should you line the aliases, the as, across multiple joins? You can configure that, and then finally all your selects have the same look and feel. And then there's the select list, right? The column list, or maybe also the list of groupings and orders. So these lists can be aligned. You can give them a multi-line layout, or you can also have a single line. So they all go on one line, which only breaks if the line gets too long. And for some legacy constructs, we also added align form declarations and perform parameters, right? So these can be aligned. They are a bit like method declarations, obviously, and this is maybe the more traditional way to format them. I personally like to continue behind the keywords. Just do it as you like. And the same, of course, for calling them, for perform. Again, sometimes you have a lot of parameters, so you can decide whether you want to continue behind. No, actually, that's not it. Oh yeah, whether you want to condense them in one line or whether you more or less always want them to be below each other. So that's the news for the ABAP language. And now the big news actually as of just now is that ABAP Cleaner has been enhanced to also support, well, you could say a different language, and that's DDL. DDL means data definition language, and that's the language that's used in CDS views. So I just had to rework a couple of hundred CDS views, and I really thought, okay, we have to do something about that, which helps people to also align CDS views in a consistent way and consistent also across the team, right? And so 21 rules were just added to ABAP Cleaner, which all care about different aspects of CDS views, of data definition language. And again, I put a lot of thought in it and hope that the options and the rules help you to have an easier life, right? So annotations are the first concern. So they are standardized. You can decide, do you want spaces inside the braces, inside the array brackets, or do you want them to be attached? Then do you want, in this kind of name value case, do you want to align them? Then if you go to layouting, you can nest the structures annotations, and you can say, okay, everything that's inside object model should be nested with this brace, right? Or you say, okay, maybe that's doing it a bit too much. Let's start from level 3, right? So the first 2 keywords will be always on the left, and then the nesting starts if you have more keywords here. So you can determine that. And then you can also order them in alphabetical order, if you like. And you can also group them by putting empty lines around them, right? So at least the multi-line annotations are easier to read if you then have an empty line after them. Then the next set of rules is about breaking. So at which point in this define view entity name, where's the line break? So that can be standardized here. Do you want to break before the entity name? Do you want to break before the with parameters? And then how should the indentation be of the keywords and of the content and so on? Then it continues, break before as select. Do you want to break before the condition? No, sometimes makes it rather long, especially if you have long view and field names. Always breaking is sometimes destroying a bit of layout. So maybe something in the middle is if the view contains a multi-line condition like this one, then it makes sense to break. If it's all one-liners, then you actually get a very nice tabular layout if you don't break. Same for associations. And then the braces around the select lists. How shall they be indented? Break before the where clause. And should it be indented again as opposed to this union? Then again, here you can standardize spaces. So for example, should there be a space after a colon and after a comma? Let's see. I actually found that if you have ABAP types like this ABAP cur, it's sometimes nice to not have them. So you can configure that, and you can also configure arithmetic operators, right? So I think this is much easier to read than this condensed version. And this is very, very different from whoever created a CDS view. Everybody has different styles. Again, spaces around brackets and inside brackets. And we differentiate here between brackets for cardinality, as here in the associations, and then path expressions, parentheses for functions. Should they have spaces? And arithmetic parentheses. Should there be spaces inside? And then there's a camel case name rule here as well. So actually, if the view name or the field name is known, you could just type it in lowercase, and then ABAP Cleaner will change it to the new known name. And again, it's the same benefit, right, as in the ABAP code. We can correct frequent typos inside at least your comments. If you have a typo inside of a value of an annotation, obviously ABAP Cleaner can't just change it, but it will add a to-do to check whether maybe this should be typed differently. And then, of course, again, you have the big topic of alignment, right? Align the parameters of a view, align the parameters when you call a source view. Should they continue after the view? Should they be in front of the row or maybe below the view name? You can align function parameters nicely and logical expressions. So you have logical expressions in very different places, right? The join condition, and then case when has logical expressions, then obviously where. Here they are very common, and having again is logical expressions. And aligning them properly really also helps to understand what is going on logically. Then you can align the name list of the fields. So that's a DDIC-based view. You have this name lists up front sometimes, but also in the group by section. And also, of course, then align the data sources and the aliases if you wish. Align the on conditions. And that's a very important one, obviously, align the select list. Do you want key to be an own column or not? Do you want to align the aliases or not? And sometimes, as you see here, they are very far away. So you can actually restrict and say, okay, don't put them further than maybe 80 spaces in, even if sometimes you have to break them to the next line, but I don't want them to be too far. And then also there are rules to separate groups with empty lines. So separate the joins from the associations and so on. And then also within the sections, you can say, if I have field with annotations around it, I want it to be separated, because otherwise it's really difficult to understand which field is this annotation referring to. You can separate the aliases at the end and the key fields from the non-key fields and so on. So lots of nice options. I hope, as always, that we found good defaults here, but otherwise you're free to change them or even to deactivate rules if you don't like them. But looking forward to your feedback here. And that would be my very quick presentation of what has changed in ABAP Cleaner. So that was my brief overview of all the things that are new. And like I said, a lot of that is due to your feedback and ideas. So thank you very much. And I hope we can continue this working mode. That was really great to see from the community side. So if you want to contribute to ABAP Cleaner or to continue to contribute, like I think is always true for all open source projects, spread the word about it, report bugs, tell us about your new ideas, what could be automated, what configuration do you need for your code style, what new ideas do you have for UI features, or if you just want to make it one click, give it a star so we know you're using it and it helps you. That's much appreciated. We listed all the resources here in the presentation. So the presentation is also attached, of course, to this video. And so what's left is for me to say thank you also from Björn's side, obviously. for your attention. And yeah, we are looking forward to your feedback and to further collaboration on this project. Thanks very much.